Okay, perfect. So here we go. We're going to look at trigger words. We're going to call this part 3, trigger words part 3, and see what you remember from what's been covered so far. First question, highest court in New York State. Highest court in New York State. If you know the answer, please type it out. Good job, Gino. So, highest court in New York State is the Court of Appeals. Next question. What's the name of the department that regulates mortgage brokers and mortgage bankers? That used to be the right answer, but then New York, they changed the name of the department. And it's also not Department of State. Good try on that. But that will be a multiple choice option. Don't pick Department of Banking and don't pick Department of State. The answer is Department of Financial Services. It's the Department of Financial Services. That's the answer for the agency in New York that regulates mortgage brokers and bankers. Okay? Main body of laws for real estate agents and brokers. What do we call the main body of laws for real estate agents and brokers? Thank you. Good job, Savannah. Article 12A. Article 12A is a correct answer. Next, when you look at limited partnerships and general partnerships, which one cannot be involved with the daily operations of the business? So the only two options you've got is limited and general partners. Which one cannot be involved with the day-to-day operations of the business? That is correct. Savannah, good job. Gino, good job. Limited cannot be involved with day-to-day operations. Next question about limited and general partnerships. So from those two options, which one can only lose up to the amount that they've invested in the business? The answer is also limited partners. All right? Very good. Okay, next. How many hours of continuing education do real estate agents and brokers need every 2 years? How many hours of continuing education do real estate agents and brokers need every 2 years? Yes, Elia, that is correct. 22.5 hours. Next question. What is the fee for an apartment information vendor's license? Again, we're looking for the fee for an apartment information vendor's license. 0 is correct. There is no fee. It used to have a fee, but no longer. That was changed last July. Good job. Flip taxes, again, flip, F-L-I-P, flip taxes are associated with what kinds of properties? I asked the question a little different than last time when we did it. So flip taxes are associated with what types of properties? Not condominiums. So when you hear flip tax, you want to think of cooperatives. All right. Next question. How many points do you need? How many points do you need to qualify as a real estate salesperson to get a broker's license? So if you worked as a traditional agent, we call it the brokerage of real estate. How many points do you need to qualify to get a broker's license? Oh, wow, we're getting all kinds of numbers here. So the optimal answer is 3,500 points. You need 3,500 points. And here's a bonus question in the same topic. How many years of experience do you need as a real estate salesperson to qualify for a broker's license? How many years as a real estate agent do you need to qualify for a broker's license? Kayla, Savannah, yes, Brianna, you're all correct. 2 years is correct. So suppose you worked as a property manager. How many years would you need then if you did not work in the brokerage of real estate? If you worked as a property manager, what am I looking for? How many years? So New York requires 3 years. They increased everything by a year going back to 2007-ish when they increased the requirements from a 45-hour course to a 75-hour course, okay? So to qualify as a real estate broker for experience, you need to have 3 years of experience, but anything else that involves a brokerage of real estate, where you work with buyers and sellers, that's 2 years. Now, we talked about the points for real estate agents to qualify for a broker's license, but how many points do you need to qualify as a, if you're, let's say you are a property manager, how many points do you need to qualify for a broker's license in addition to the 3 years that we just talked about? There we go, Stephanie, good job. So 5,250, that's 5,250 points is what you need to qualify if you did what we call equivalency experience. So if you worked as a mortgage broker, as an appraiser, as an investor, as a private flipper of property, you would have to have 3 years. So you might say to yourself, well, what's the deal with, like, what's 3 years? 35 hours a week multiplied by 50 weeks gives you 1 year. So if you put on your application that you worked at General Motors and you were part-time at Wendy's and you were full-time in real estate, you're going to get your application will get audited. Because New York's going to say, when did you sleep? How did you get 3 years of experience in as a property manager and do everything else? It's just not going to make sense. So make sure when you upgrade your license to get a broker's license, if you do, there's a small percentage of you that will, make sure your application makes sense, okay? I hope what I just said makes sense as well. All right, next question. What do we call that form that gets filed that, we did talk about this last week, the form that gets filed that puts a world on constructive notice that a commission wasn't paid? What do we call that form? That is correct, Kayla, that is correct. Affidavit of entitlement. Affidavit of entitlement is correct. Next, when you hear the phrase judicial appeal, you should think of what? The term you should think of is Article 78, appeal. 95% of the time, appeal has to be in the question for you to be able to know that it's probably Article 78, especially because that'll be a multiple choice option. The only other time we talk about appeals is in terms of zoning board of appeals, but that's like a whole separate topic. It does not involve a court per se. So when we combine 2 or more adjoining lots to form a larger parcel, what is that term referencing? What am I looking for? It starts with an A. Assemblage is what we're looking for. Okay, so that's a real good review of Chapter 1. Let's take a quick look at Chapter 2. Who do we not have a fiduciary relationship with? The customer or the client? Again, who do we not have a fiduciary relationship with? Customers, correct. So good job, Shanna. Customers, we owe fairness and honesty, F&H, fairness and honesty. Clients, we owe CC load. Some other schools, they teach old car as the acronym, but we owe CC load is the acronym of everything. Care, confidentiality, loyalty, obedience, accounting, and disclosure. Those are what you owe someone you have a fiduciary relationship with. Fiduciary relationship, ladies and gentlemen, is the highest relationship recognized by law. Okay, so there's a thing in real estate we have. It's kind of a weird word that you probably have not heard in this context before. When a real estate agent does, like, they don't quite lie, but they're sort of misrepresenting, but they're not intending fraud. What is that word that I'm looking for? It starts with a P. So if you were writing flashcards up, you would have on your flashcard statements of opinion. That would be like the shortest way to put this. Puffing is correct. Good job, Gino. Puffing. Puffing is the word that we're looking for. Next trigger word. Being responsible for the actions of another. What is that term you should know when you hear me say being responsible for the actions of another? Starts with a V. That's a great hint because there's only, I don't know if we have more than one word that starts with a V you really need to know. So vicarious liability is being responsible for the actions of another. Good. If you saw a question on the state exam and it said something like this, when do you present the agency disclosure form? Again, when do you present the agency disclosure form? There's a little phrase you should be able to pick out in the choices that would follow. Yes, good job, Gino. You are on fire tonight. At your first substantive meeting is when we want to present that agency disclosure form. Okay. So sometimes you get people who don't want to fill out a form. Matter of fact, they don't want to fill anything out. So what do you do then? They don't want to sign your form, and you know you're supposed to get this form signed. What should you do? When someone doesn't want to sign the agency disclosure form, which hopefully means they read it, understand it, and then they sign it as proof, you have them fill out the refusal to sign the agency disclosure form. Yes, that's correct. There's a form that's in your book. It's right before the contract, and it says, I think it's like chapter 2, refusal to sign the agency disclosure form. What's the name of the agreement? Again, what's the name of the agreement that allows a seller to sell their home and not pay a commission? But if any broker in that area sells it, a commission is due. What do we call that type of form? This is a real common state exam question. So the seller can sell and not pay a commission, but any broker in the area, a commission would be paid. So the answer we're looking for is exclusive agency. Nope, not implied. An exclusive agency form. That's an exclusive agency agreement. So if you're driving down the street, next question, you're driving down the street and you see 7 signs from 7 different real estate companies on a property. What kind of a listing agreement or what kind of a listing situation would that tell you is going on at that property? An open listing is what you see typically on a commercial property. So you're driving down Transit Road and you see all these signs on a property. And what happens typically is the most, usually the most eye-catching sign is the one that the buyers will call first. And then they call, they get voicemail, they hang up, they pick up the phone and call the next one and the next one. So that's why it's really important that you are reachable. How many years do we keep real estate records for? This is something we covered last week as well. How many years do we keep real estate records for? 3 years. Good job. That is correct. Next question. Remember I said this is like rapid fire. I like it. I like this a lot. So what do we call a listing agreement that's illegal in New York State? It's illegal. And it's illegal because the homeowner says to you, Mike, you can list my property, and as long as I get $90,000 for it, you can keep anything above that amount. So this is illegal, and what do we call it? Okay, so the answer, wow, it's the first one I got you on. Net, N-E-T, a net listing. Net listings are illegal, and I gave you the description already, so hopefully you don't do that, okay? All right, a little bit more. It's a really good review. This is, I know you can't tell, but I'm excited right now because this is very thorough, very thorough. What do we call that body of laws that goes way back to the 1800s that affects us in real estate? And examples of things that you can't do would be when you meet with a seller and they're ready to sign the listing agreement with you, and the lister, and they say to you, well, what commission rate does everyone else charge? Which is a fair question that sometimes you will get. I didn't ask all the question yet. So you tell them, oh, we all charge the same. Okay, you can't say that. You cannot say that. Like back in the olden days, like when I first started in real estate, before multiple listing was so computerized like it is now, like it's really like, nowadays you just show people your iPad or they look on their phone, but you would hand them a book that looked like a catalog. Like if your I don't know, grandparents maybe remember an old catalog, like I don't know, J.C. Penney's or one of those. Sears had a catalog, I guess. I don't remember seeing it, but that's what it looked like. And it would have all the houses for sale in that neighborhood, or all actually in the whole area that you're representing, that are for sale. Okay, so you could look and see that, okay, there's a 3% copay, 3.5%, 3.3. So you could give them the book and say, here's what you say if you get a question about this. Someone says to you, what's the average commission rate in the area? Say, by law, this is the answer you should give. I know I asked you a question, I'm talking, okay. But you say to them, by law, I'm not allowed to talk about what other people charge. I can only tell you what we charge. And we feel that we have a competitive rate based on all the services that we provide. And then you kind of move on and keep talking about, because here's the thing about real estate. If people are asking you whether the rate you charge is typical, that means you have not sold them on the value of the service, okay? But that's something that you learn about after you get out of the class. We teach you the laws and regulations, and you learn that afterwards. So going back again, when you can't talk about commission rates, when you can't exclude real estate companies from your board of realtors, let's say that there's like a low-priced 1% broker out there, and you might be in Hicksville, New York, and people, they're like, oh, no, we don't want this company to join our board of realtors because all they do is charge 1%. They're not like us and charge 6, 7% or whatever you charge. What is that body of laws? Price fixing is one of the things that are part of that body of laws. So Gino, you're close. The word I'm looking for starts with an S. Okay, so what I'm looking for is a Sherman Antitrust Act. The Sherman Antitrust Act is the body of laws. We discussed the definition of land and real estate. And then we told you that the definition of real property includes something that starts with a B that makes it different than the definition of real estate and the definition of land. What is that thing that starts with a B that you get with real property? It's a bundle. It's the bundle of legal rights. When you have a real property interest, the bundle of legal rights is that extra thing that you get that you don't get when you have the term real estate and land. And you'll see that on page 56 of your book if you want to look that up. Okay. Next, I want to talk about water rights. Water rights on small bodies of water. So small, narrow bodies of water. What do we call that? Riparian rights. Riparian rights is what we're looking for. R-I-P-A-R-I-A-N. Riparian rights. Not to be mixed up with littoral rights. A fee simple estate is the most complete type of ownership we can have in a real estate interest. What's the term we use when that fee simple interest is held by one person? There's a term that's counterintuitive to what you would normally think until you've read it or learned it here. So fee simple ownership by one person. Ownership in severalty is ownership by one. It's not absolute fee. It is severalty is the answer. Severalty is ownership by one. We have three types of tenancies in New York. Two have rights of survivorship and one does not. What's the one that does not have rights of survivorship? tenancy in common. So we have tenancy in common, joint tenancy, and tenancy by the entireties. All right, so that's all we have for review right now.